Welcome to Empowered Returns, a show that surfaces forward-thinking real estate advice that investors and developers need to help them invest smarter and build better. All right, welcome to another episode of Empowered Returns. We are psyched to have Rens Hayes of H&O Engineering. Did I get that right, Rens?
H&O Structural Engineering.
H&O Structural Engineering, my bad. But welcome, Rens. Psyched to have you.
All good. We'll drop the structural engineer when everybody just knows what H&O is.
Just
right?
H&O.
It's going to be a lot more than just that. So.
That's what we did, actually. We went from Charles Gate Realty Group. We just really dropped it to Charles Gate at this point.
Straight Charles Gate.
I don't know if anyone knows what that means, but we've decided to do it anyway.
Yeah, we got the domain, too.
That's right.
There you go. That's hard to do.
It was. Just needed someone to take control there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Nice work.
Exactly. So Rens, why don't you maybe just dive into a little bit of background, how you got into structural engineering in the first place and kind of what that actually means. Explain that to people a little bit.
Sure. So structural engineering in its most understandable form is we collaborate with real estate developers and architects. An architect will really lay out a building, how the floor plan goes, where all the rooms are, what the building looks like. And we have to design the bones of the structure, right? We have to make that building stand up. So your column, your walls, your floors, the foundation, the roof, that's what we're responsible for. How I got into structural engineering, my family business is Rens Welding and Fabricating. So I grew up in a structural steel fabrication shop, fabricating and erecting buildings, and then miscellaneous metals, which is stairs and railings and that sort of stuff. So that exposed me to buildings. I was naturally drawn to math in school. I hated reading and writing back then. And to be honest, now writing and copyright has become probably my strength in the engineering field, which is kind of counterintuitive. So I just, there's a stigma in family business that when you're born into family business, you have it made, right? So the whole concept back then in high school was you're just going to go work for your dad. You're just going to go work for your dad, take over the business. And I was like, stats showed that most second generations are bum business owners and they tank the business. And I was like, I'm not going to be that guy.
Wait, so were you actually thinking about that in high school? You recognized that? Yeah.
I went to engineering because I was I'm good at math. Engineers are good at math. I know buildings. I'm going to go learn how to design these things so we can design and build them. And I'm adding value to the business instead of just riding coattails of something that was paved before me.
Cool.
Nice. That's how I ended up.
So, and you have a partner now that you formed H&O with. And so you went straight from the family business into the H&O structural engineering. Is that the kind of the background?
There's a little loop there. My business partner, Jeremiah O'Neill, is an absolute stud. I always say he's the 0.01%. The 0.01 is very intentional. He is a top talent in engineering. Guy gets it. And he could explain engineering, the most complicated concept, to anyone. The guy is a machine. Part of getting your license in engineering, you have to, get the degree, take 2 tests, but to take the second test, you have to work for 4 years under a licensed engineer.
Okay.
And then you have to pass the test. So I had to go work somewhere else to be able to engineer on my own. And so that's where I met Jeremiah. We were colleagues for a number of years, built a bond, saw opportunity in partnering together, and that's kind of what launched it. But I left that after I got my engineering license. I left the engineering field and went back to the family business and ran Rens Welding and Fabricating with my father for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And in that time, we were getting engineering work through the steel business, and Jeremiah and I were collaborating and getting that engineering work done together while we were growing the steel business. So that exposed us to running a business and what it took to grow a business and the opportunity that running a business presented itself while we were building up this engineering book of work. And that's kind of what led us to kind of take the leap and grab that opportunity.
Interesting. And so I know we've had a lot of conversations about just sort of operating and running businesses. Did you kind of learn that on the fly operating the family business, or is it something you were really intentional about from, the very beginning of H&O?
Great question. So jumping into the family business, at that time I was debating on, do I go get an MBA or do I go run the business? And the decision became quite clear. I thought if I was going to get an MBA, I wanted to go to a top school because I thought the network was a lot of the value of the education. Mm-hmm. So I was going to go to MIT Sloan. That was going to be my school of choice. That was going to put my career on pause for over a year, cost me $100,000. Or I could go try to help my family grow a business have full exposure to running a business, and I could try to invest and get an MBA level education through a daily habit of Audible and podcasts on my commute to work. And that was back in 2014. So I committed to learning and growing in all areas of business. So while we're trying to grow Rens Welding and Fabricating, we didn't have marketing. So I'm like, all right, how do I do marketing? I just read books for months straight. How do I manage people? How do I think of operations, like pricing, structure? Whatever hurdle we were facing, I would just like dive in for hours a day listening to books. And I had a real live case study to pull. And so one of the lessons, and that was really key to us kicking off H&O, in the building design world, we have specs. And so one of those things of a steel fabricator, when we design a steel building, in our spec and in most specs across the country, you require them to be an AISC certified fabricator. And that's the American Institute of Steel Construction. Most engineers, including myself growing up in this, I had no clue what that meant. Right. It just meant to me that a steel fabricator was better than another one that wasn't certified. That's what it told me. What it truly meant was that they had a written down, documented process for how everything happened at the steel company. So from how do you get jobs? How do you price a job? How do you do shop drawings? How do you fabricate steel, buy steel, ship steel? Like literally everything written down step by step. So anyone could plug in, and quality standards, quality assurance, it was all documented. And I was like how hypocritical. Like I just came from an industry with none of this process. And here we are requiring a steel fabricator to have all this process. And then that was like the light bulb. And we were like, that's the missing piece. Like there's no design process. There's no intent. Like we all approach designing a building differently. And if we can create a system, we're going to be able to optimize and train people at a faster rate in a more aligned manner to like achieve company goals. So when we launched H&O in 2016, we didn't launch a website. We didn't go out pounding the pavement trying to drive more business. We literally wrote down a design process and figured out like, how are we going to scale a business and how are we going to make it successful that when we do get the work, because we knew the work was there, when we need to onboard and train people, how are we going to do that successfully? And we built that first.
It's funny that's exactly, I think, the stereotypical thought I would have. Of course, an engineer plans how to start the business and run the business before actually diving in and going to pound the pavement. Unlike us, who was like, yeah, you want to do business with us? Yeah, let's go. No clue what we're doing.
Sales. You'll pay me to do this? Yeah, that's exactly what we do.
Yeah. So we've at least we've learned over time that we do, in fact, need a lot of the process and sort of business planning and even just building culture and everything else you want to do with a business. That's really the important part to building a sustainable, growing, strong business. But it took us a while to learn that. So it's, kudos to you for figuring that out very early.
Culture is a hard one, right? And to be honest, through most of my career, I didn't see the importance of culture. It wasn't until like you submerge yourself in like organizational balance and growth and teams that you start to learn about culture. Like I would say most of society still is not in tune with like, what's the negative and the upside to culture, right? Like culture debt is the worst debt you can have in a business. It's the hardest debt to pay back.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I like to say too that there's very few true differentiators in any business, and culture is one of those things. Really, your people and your culture is what really differentiates you. Because there's so many, in your business, our business, and most businesses, there's so many competitors and so many things you can do alike and maybe better or slightly differently. But the people are really what makes a business different.
100%, especially in professional services like your business and our business, right?
Exactly, totally.
So how do you take that sort of blueprint, right, and apply that to the assignments you take on, right, on an execution level when you're working on developments? I mean, I think it's really interesting, and it seems like it's a very different approach than a lot of your competitors take, right? Like it's kind of a more holistic view. Can you kind of walk us through sort of how you've used that as a way to kind of be your service platform?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start at a bigger picture of an organization on how to create alignment in a culture. And I'm kind of a broken record when I talk about this stuff. It's your mission, your vision, and your core values. That was a lesson I learned like years into running a business. I was like, I've studied everything. I have a pretty high business acumen, but I feel like a yo-yo over here. I pull one string and the other thing falls down. I improve here. And like, I was like, where the hell do you start? Where do you start? And it's the mission, vision, and values. That's your purpose. That's where your company is going, like your North Star, your 5-year vision. Like, what are we all working towards? What is this company going to be known for in 5 years? And your core values guide decision-making and organizational behavior. So when you have those things, that's a framework, right? That's the bumper on the bowling lane for people to make decisions that are in the best interest of the company. If you haven't defined why a company exists or how you create value or where you're going, like, how is the team going to intuitively have the context to help the company succeed? Like, success isn't defined. So when that comes down to a project, if you're just taking on any work, you don't really understand what the value you're trying to drive is. You're just doing a task for a client that hired you to do a task. Yeah. So if that's what you think your job is, you just put your head down and start doing the task, right? Where we're trying to align with clients of growth and scale. Like, we have national vision. We're trying to expand nationally, work in the biggest and best projects, the high rise, the large scale developments, and we need to provide value. So how we do that is the saying that I come is, we're not in the structural engineering business serving real estate developers. We're in the real estate development business serving structural engineering. Like, that is the vehicle that in which we contribute to the success of a development. So when a developer comes in, it's like, all right, what are we trying to achieve? What are the goals? Is there any deadlines or timelines that are like a major risk or a major opportunity, right? Tax credits, is there historic tax credits on this job? Those come with a big deadline. What do we have to do to get there? What do you need to make that happen? Is there an equity portion? Is there a grant involved? Is there a bank debt? Is there a closure date that we have to quantify risk and opportunity and development before you can close on a piece of land? Like, understanding what the risk and opportunity, that caters the decision making and the information we put out to start a project. So it all starts with project planning, right? You identify the risk, you identify the opportunity, you identify the timeline, and then we work on driving quality decisions and communicating how each decision impacts the success of the project. That's really how we start.
Yeah, no, that's a great, I think, point there, is just making sure your goals are aligned to say, what is the vision of this overall project? Not what is the piece, not what the point of this one piece is, but what's the alignment for the overall project, the goals of the project, whether it's financial goals or others that you mentioned. And that's a key piece. So I guess the question is, how do you ensure that? Well, first of all, how are you guys getting business now? Are you getting it from architects, from developers directly? Responding to RFPs, marketing, and, with the business you're getting, how are you making sure that your vision, your purpose is aligned with, the projects and the developers?
In terms of how we get work, and a lot of what we're doing, let's say 2 years ago, I started investing in building a brand and becoming visible within the market. Like, there's a saying, it's not who you know, it's who knows you, right? You could be the best company in the world, but if top talent doesn't know you exist and what opportunity you provide for why they should work there, like, they're never going to find you. They're not going to reach out. And the clients, if they don't know about you or where you provide value or what you're about, they're not going to come knocking on your door. So I think the most important thing you can do in today's environment is build the brand and be visible, right? So 2 years ago, we started posting on LinkedIn to create and share our point of view and kind of put out a brand image of like a very high quality organization that understands like the cause and effect of business and how it delivers a quality product at the end of the day. And in a way, like, we're a growing business that operates and competes at a high level, but a small business to the untrained eye can appear like as a risk. If you've been following and paying attention to the things we talk about and how we operate over the last 2 years, you're not going to question whether or not we can do our job. Of course we can do our job. Like, we are very well prepared to do that. I do question sometimes in like, do we need a better outbound strategy? Or like right now, the online presence, the podcast, the goodwill, sharing like other people's stories, creating value in the market, that creates demand. If I had to be critical of like our current space and what I'm focused on now is, how do we capture demand? Like, I don't have an easy, painless way for people to get in touch other than a direct message, which to some of us is no big deal. Like, hey, just send a message. But to others, that's a pretty big leap. Yeah. You got to like make it, you got to invite it. Alex Ramosi puts it like, you got to make an offer so good, people feel stupid saying no. Like, I got to make that painless. I got to have a better, clear value proposition and more availability to make it easy for people to get in touch. And then even in outbound, like in my experience, cold outbound does not work. It's like, hey, Mr. Developer, architect, like, You do work, we design buildings. Like, what do you say? Wait, you hire us for your next job? Like, not a very good sales pitch, right? Like, you got to hit a pain point, but warm introductions are always welcome. And now when we get a warm introduction, we've created a brand and chances are they know who we are. So it makes that conversation much easier and we can get straight to value.
Yeah. And one thing we've talked about, and it was very interesting when, one of the first times we were together kind of talking shop, you like are very selective with your clients and the projects that you take on.
100%.
And, a lot of people obviously take that opposite approach, which is like any piece of business they can get their hands on, they're going to go try to grab it. And, we talk about right fit clients, right? We've had that conversation
100%.
before, and there's an alignment there is a word that's been used a lot, so far in this conversation. So talk a little bit about kind of how that how that's differentiated you from your competitors and sort of how you go through that vetting process on, what clients and or projects that you want to take on.
Charles Gate does that in a great way too, right? Like client alignment is so important. You guys understand that. I'll come at this with two different examples because I think both are very applicable to really any industry and any client relationship. One's going to be on execution once you're in an agreement working on a project together. There's that one. And then there's the second one is like just holistic alignment as a client in the values, but also the scale in which you're trying to operate. So I'll go with project execution for the first one. We talk about setting up. You got to define the parameters in which success is going to be measured. So that's goals and that's timeline and that's people responsible. You guys are developing a building. You ask me like, hey, Rens, can you design a permit set in 4 weeks? I say, that's a really aggressive schedule. You guys are important to us. We can get it done. But I need X, Y, and Z by Friday. Can you get me X, Y, and Z on Friday? Yes? All right, great. Does the client get you X, Y, and Z on Friday? Or do they have an excuse or do they push it? Or do they understand that because they couldn't get their job done, we're now in a compromised position to do our job? What can happen often in business is people feel pressured like, oh, we really want to get this client. It requires a 4-week turnaround. We say yes, but then we have no communication of give and take on what actually has to happen for that deliverable to have a quality outcome. Like we can make stuff up and jump to assumptions and make decisions on a building without getting input from others. But does that really put everybody in a position to succeed? No. It creates a massive risk because there might be change later. It's probably going to be more expensive. I might have cut corners on designing efficiently because designing heavy was easier for me to hit your deadline. So oops, like it could have been $1 million structure. Now it's 1.25, right? Because I wanted to make you happy, get the job and get it done by that date. So there's always a given, anything's possible, right? It just takes time and money. The second piece I'd add to that on client alignment is not every $10,000 job is created equal, right? Let's say you could make the same amount of profit. It costs you $5,000 to do the job, and you could make $5,000 by doing this $10,000 job for a client. For someone like us, if we're looking to work on high-rise, large-scale jobs, and we want to do so at a national level, it helps us to focus on clients that do this type of work in volume. So our ideal client are people that we can generate north of $500,000 or $1 million in work a year with. If we have an opportunity to work with that client and our first go at it's a $10,000 job all day, right? We're aligned in where we're trying to go. And this is our first intro to see how we work well together. If somebody's coming at us with a $10,000 job and they might only do 1, 2, or 3 of those a year, we wish you well. You might be very well suited. We might work great together. There's not enough volume that makes it worth our time. Every hour spent in your business is doing 2 things. It's earning money for the business today, and it's putting you in a position to earn money tomorrow or next year or in 5 years. So I want to make sure we're getting the compounding value on that time spent by working with the right clients that are going to build that future business.
It's especially early in the business. It's a very confident mindset to go. It's hard to develop, I think, for a lot of people. But it's amazing to hear sort of that confidence saying, I don't need to. I'm not in a position that I'm under this pressure to take every job. I can make sure there's that alignment. How do you? I guess how did you develop that mindset so early? A and B. How do you communicate with clients ahead of a project starting, whether it's an onboarding process or some other method to make sure that there is that, not just talking the big picture of alignment, but saying, hey, we need this by Friday. How do you make sure that that stuff is clearly spelled out for them, what you need to do your job?
Like in actually like what we're expecting from them to be able to do that job successfully.
Yeah.
We're literally communicating right back to them. It's like they send us, it's an accelerated compressed schedule. And like our job is to say whether it is or is not possible. And if it is possible, what we need from them to make that happen, right? So that might be architectural. Let's say it's a multifamily building. We all work with multifamily. Are the units finalized, right? Like, do we have actual like drawings where that's like confirmed? Is the edge of the building set? Is the facade complete? Do we know where the canopies are? Like, if we're working on a really tight schedule, those are things that we're communicating, like rough units set at schematic. By the time we go to DD, we're looking for final unit plans, that type of thing, right? We're getting buy-in on what are we making the elevator shaft out of? Is there gypcrete on the floor? Is it like an acoustomat with 2 layers of sheathing? The things that are going to impact our job is our responsibility to communicate. And we just push all of those decisions. I like to say 70% of the decisions on every building, on every real estate development, the same decisions have to be made. So why don't we just kick off the project by making those decisions? And we've now significantly reduced our risk. We've reduced the chance of change, and we've significantly increased our probability of success. And when you eliminate risk and all wasted efforts, like spinning our wheels, we call it scope creep or rework, doing things more than once, you align decision making with an actual process. Like, it creates time for everybody on the team to actually focus on things that create value instead of like trying to cover up our tracks to just get a job done and overcome our flaws, right?
No, I think that's the right mindset, and I think the more you can convey to your clients, like, hey, we've set up these best practices so that we create a better result for you, and that really echo that alignment and make sure they understand that, and hey, we need you to deliver or to provide answer. Well, in your case, it's drawings or architectural plans or whatever you may need. In our case, it's different things, but to set that up to make sure that everyone's clear on what's needed, or else the job just can't get done, or it's going to cost more money, take more time. And all those things, but I'm impressed, and we've talked about this before, because you've developed that mindset so early on. When it's a lot, the usual mode of operation is take any business you can get. So that's pretty cool. But that's why you're delivering such incredible value to your clients and getting a lot of repeat business, and you're growing and scaling nationally in that way. So that's awesome. So good for you.
Thank you so much.
What on the specifics of actually diving into the engineering and the structure, like where is it that you guys think you can deliver value to a client? So say we're developing a project and we come to you and be like, hey, we want to hire H&O, or we have this other firm we're looking at. Where is it that you guys are coming in saying we're different because we're adding this, we're delivering value in excess of this other company? What's the kind of value prop specifically?
And there's a lot of volume coming with this.
There's a lot of volume. We're going to keep it.
So you're gonna want this job.
I'm a business engineer.
This is an important client.
Yeah. I'm doing many more projects very quickly.
A lot of projects. Really excited for their next development. First, I'm in the business of engineering. I'm like not as much in the X and O's, but when it comes to where we create the biggest difference, it's in the project planning phase. So let's say you want to build a high rise. It's like, all right, what city are we working in? How big is it? How similar are the floor plans? And then we start talking about, we're looking at that specific building, and then we talk about what are our structural options, right? Boston's a steel city. New York's a concrete city, right? So like it's regionally dependent, it's city dependent. And the way we do that is we lay out the pros and cons for each system. We get buy-in from the development team, and you kick things off by doing a conceptual study. So we can do a high level amount of engineering and a pretty in-depth coordination markup on conceptual drawings so that we select the right system. I think it's a huge fail if you haven't gone through that due diligence, if you price out an entire building and then realize there's another building type that we could have done this with, and now we just lost an 8-month design process and we got to turn back around and redesign this building. It's like, that's time value of money. That's a big risk in real estate development from my perspective. Mm-hmm. So when we can push that conversation and talk about pros and cons, and then like if we get a contractor involved to do conceptual pricing, you test the concrete model, you look at it as composite steel, you look at it, can it be mass timber, can it be a light gauge structural system? You compare your options, and it just improves our decision making collectively as a team when we're putting the right information on the table.
Awesome.
So just again understanding that that's maybe again more the sort of holistic business side, but just getting in the weeds a little bit on this. How do you stay on top of all these trends, and do you see any major trends coming in your in the execution side of your business that are going to have impact for developers?
Impact for developers. The biggest trend right now in development and sustainability, reducing our carbon footprint, is mass timber. You guys see me out there. I'm always talking about mass timber. We got Boston's first 7-story mass timber building, 11 East Lenox. Go check it out. It really fits. What's exciting, real estate and development and construction, that is there. I don't know if there's a more mature industry out there. And when you have a mature industry, it means it's very well saturated in the suppliers and how things are done. And it's very much the same. So you can get commoditized very easily if you're not trying to differentiate intentionally, right? So mass timber is kind of unique. It's like an emerging market within a very mature industry, which means there's no legacy brand that owns that space. So we're a rising firm providing high quality work at scale, right? But we're still displacing previous suppliers that were in that space. An emerging market comes along, no one owns that. So we have as good of a shot at getting to the top of the mass timber market as anyone. So that's really exciting. And I think from a developer's perspective, the same thing applies to your building. Like, how do you differentiate from the condo or the apartment building down the street or across the street, right? Or across the town in the other neighborhood? Like, it's an opportunity to paint a better, like there's a sustainability, there's a differentiator. It's not better, it's different. It's got a different aesthetic, a different vibe. It's going to appeal to different people. So I think it's a really exciting product.
Yeah, awesome. And I from what I've seen, especially from you putting out there in the world, that it is a very exciting product for all those reasons. And does that affect how you guys? I mean, does it require a lot of work from you and your team as far as retraining and learning these new systems, whether it's mass timber or some other one, or how do you go about making sure your whole team is staying on the forefront of some of this new material sciences or whatever?
It does require some, like R&D, right? Research and development. So especially for that first push to get 11 East Lenox out there, like the development team, the contractor, the architect, our team, like we literally all went to a conference in New York just to go try to meet the right people and talk to the right people. And that's what ended up giving us visibility into how to get a mass timber development done. It connected us with the right partners. Eli Gould of the Quebec Wood Export Bureau was like instrumental. And then we got connected with Jean-Marc Dubois of Nordic Structures, who was our mass timber product on that process. In terms of like getting our team up to speed, and this is actually a really good business like case study, and you understand the importance of being niche, correct? We have a very deep technical expertise on our team and a wide breadth. Like there literally isn't a building we couldn't design. You can throw any material at us, any building type. I actually feel fortunate in structural engineering. It's really like the things that change in a building are the layout, the facade, and the mechanical systems, and the loads from the people that are in them. Like not that many variables. We can figure that out. Like it's a very short learning curve to transition to another. In an architect, you can't take an architect that lays out multifamily residential apartment housing and say, hey, I got a hospital. Could you lay the hospital out for me? Like that, the learning curve to go from market to market as an architect or even a mechanical engineer is massively different. And to us, like the jump isn't that big. So just because you can do something, does that mean you should? And that comes back to like the decision as a business. Like, do you go niche? Like structural engineering is already pretty niche, but like, do we go niche on a market? Like, do I say like, I'm only multifamily, or I'm only lab, or I'm only hospitals, or do you try to spread it? And it's like, do you stay niche to a certain point and then you expand by going into new markets? And like, when's the right time to expand? I don't have the crystal ball, but those are the things that are going on in my head, trying to figure it out.
Yeah, interesting sort of business corporate strategy questions and how you grow the business and where the different opportunities lie. So yeah, those are always the fun things for me anyway to think about. That is, how do you grow the business? How do you how do you attract the right customers? How are you attracting those right clients, for instance, whether you're using an outbound sales strategy or inbound marketing or brand awareness or whatever. But yeah, those are the fascinating questions for sure.
Those are the puzzles.
Yeah, those are the puzzles, exactly. Sticking with the sort of structural engineering a little bit, is there anything that you see as being done or mistakes made on projects that you think are either costing too much money or adding too much risk or anything that relates to sort of the engineering side or even design and engineering in general that you've seen that developers or investors may want to look out for or think about in the future?
Things that I look for, or advice that I give holistically to real estate developers, and this is coming again, like I focus on the business of things, right? So when I'm looking and evaluating our partners in business or any type of company, I'm trying to judge and measure the quality of the business that I'm working with. Like if you're comparing, I like to say like in real estate development, right? If you have, let's say your building's $100 million, like I use a rough order of magnitude, 30% of your building cost is your structure. So my focus is on that $30 million and how can I get the best return on your investment for that? If I can move that 5%, that's a significant amount of money. And then if you think about the people that you're hiring or the consultant that you're hiring, 10, 20, 30% premium on a fee might be 50 grand. 80 grand, but like the buyer in you is like, hey, I got I say 50 grand right here. That's 50 grand in my pocket. And then all of a sudden you look at that, they're 50 grand, but they're not as high quality of an organization. They don't have training. They don't have a design process. They don't really have quality assurance. They're taking on too much work because they say yes to everything and they're priced low. So people say yes more. So now they don't have a system. They can't manage the work that they have there. So their risk is that they don't have the capacity to give the project the focus. And risk, when you're talking about a $30 million move, right? 10% on a $30 million, that's $3 million. 5% is $1.5
real money.
5 versus maybe an extra 50 grand in a fee.
50
right,
grand.
yeah.
And then when I look and talk like that, if I'm selling on those things, I'm talking about reducing risk, giving you confidence. Remember, I'm a development partner. I'm not your structural engineer. I'm a development partner who happens to be able to service the project as a structural engineer. So we're focused on making sure you're not throwing away that 5 or 10% of your $30 million investment.
Yeah. And I think we talk about this a lot too. We see oftentimes the mistake being made of trying to do this value engineering and saving money on vendors or saving money on like finishes, these minor things that and it can have a much more dramatic impact on the overall value you're delivering to the market at the end of the day, which is we're all building buildings to sell them or to lease them, not just to build them and save the most cost we can build them. We'll make them, sell them to the right audience or to the right customers and to the right tenants to make a good return on investment. And if you're looking at it from that holistic lens that you mentioned of, I don't have to spend the least amount of money possible on any given part of this. What I have to do is make sure the money is being spent correctly so that I'm creating the best return on investment for myself and the investors in the project. And I think it's hard because like cost is part of the equation, but it's easy to see those face costs. That's like, in a structural engineer's cost versus like, oh, by designing a project better, not having cost overruns and you're going to save more money throughout the scope of a project. And this
risk, future financial exposure,
all of that.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when it comes to building design, that risk you're talking about, change orders, like there's a saying, you got to know your scope. So like one of our biggest responsibilities as a design consultant is we have a set of drawings that are essentially a set of instructions for people to build a building, right? They follow the set of instructions so they know how to build it. It's also capturing scope so that there can be a confident buyout. You're a developer and you got a construction price based on a set of drawings, and you already raised your equity and you already raised your debt, and then you have a change order for 50 grand, 100 grand, $500,000, like depending on what the scope is, right? Like, where's that money coming from? Like you go like hand in your pockets, tail between your legs and ask for more money, or you like write a check out of your own checkbook. Like those are painful conversations. So a lot of what our role as consultants is like define an entire scope, identify areas of fee exposure, particularly in existing buildings. There's things you don't know. So you want to have higher contingencies, but our role is to highlight, here's the areas that we could run into. Let's help quantify what those buckets might look like so that you can build the right pro forma and understand what you're going for. And how do we mitigate that risk, right?
Fascinating.
It's predictability of your capital. That's ultimately what we're selling.
Absolutely. And, predictability in planning, predictability of capital, and actually being able to, deliver projects on time, and actually, because on budget, but ultimately, there's the time value of money that you mentioned earlier, and so a 6-month or delay is hits your return hard. In
Carry costs,
carry costs, everything else, Any examples of projects that you've worked on that were, difficult or challenging, or that you had to, think really creatively to overcome those challenges?
We're coming at this from a technical lens.
Hey, it could be technical. I'd love to hear the technical if you have one.
Let's talk about a technical. We're doing a 100,000 square foot repositioning of an old timber building, 6-story. On one side, it's 6 stories. On the other side, it's 5 stories. It's old heavy timber inside of a brick, around like a brick exterior wall assembly, right? And we're repositioning this as a lab building. So that means you have to increase floor performance. The timber is not conducive to that type of floor, so we're pouring a concrete topping on all that. And there's heavy mechanical that goes on the roof. These brick buildings was built pre-1900. It's really old, and it doesn't meet today's like design codes. And when you add that much equipment on the roof and you add all this mass with the concrete topping on top of the floors, we trigger a lateral upgrade. So how do you upgrade the lateral system on an existing brick building? It's really challenging. How do you do that cost effectively and maintain the floor program, right? In Seaport, I think a lot of us know, like, the soils aren't great in Seaport, right? It's essentially in the ocean. You have piles under there. The soil's useless. So you have pile supported foundations. You have a lateral system that doesn't work, and we got to make this building suitable. And so a really cool way to upgrade the lateral system in an existing brick building is creating a concrete shear wall, and it's one-sided, and you use a product called shotcrete. Often we all know of concrete. You see it pouring in a house or on a building. You have formwork on both sides, and you use a concrete truck or a pump truck, and you dump concrete down there. This is literally shotcrete sprayed on the wall like a hose. So the brick acts as your form. We put a layer of rebar up the wall, and then you spray the inside of the wall. And that's how we're able to get that strength to increase the lateral system on the building.
Wow, cool.
So it's almost it's almost like it's spray insulation, except it's actual concrete.
Correct.
With rebar wedged. But wow, that's crazy.
It's a great analogy. Yeah, it's exactly what it is.
Okay. Wow, interesting.
All right. But existing buildings, complex, like vertical existing building repositioning, those are probably the most complicated buildings you run into. And I'd say, like, not all engineers can, it's a different, like, you got to wrap your mind around that building differently. You're not starting from scratch, and you don't get to pick and choose where things are. Half the things you don't know what you're going to run into. So that's a big one on identifying scope, communicating what things may or may not be, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Those sort of historical rehabs, renovations are so fascinating. Sometimes, you see these beautiful end projects, but there's so much difficulty and challenges in a lot of these, like the one you just gave. That it's fascinating, but it's beautiful around here because we see it a lot because it's an old city and area, and so you see it a lot, and it's cool because you're preserving some history while still modernizing. But there's a lot of difficulties, and I wish I was as smart as you to figure some of this engineering out. But
so that was a challenging one. What's kind of like been the most exciting ones you've worked on? Just one or two examples.
Really exciting project for us. We're working with Landmark Associates and Cube 3 on an 18-story high-rise student housing development in Philadelphia. That's going to top out in March.
Nice.
That was a really exciting portfolio element to us. That's the tallest building we have to date.
Cool.
And we've always been pushing. We service high-rise projects, and this one was like the first one to get out of the ground and get up there. So we're really excited to see that.
Oh, very cool. And is that your first project in Philadelphia as well?
That is our first project in Philly. So we work with a few national clients. So we have like a book of work. We've probably done work in almost half the states at this point. But Philadelphia's got kind of a pipeline of more vertical development, which is really exciting to see.
Cool. Does it matter for you guys locationally where buildings are located? Do you feel like you need to travel out there at all, or how does it work for your process?
Yeah, so we do. So we're willing to do a project if it aligns, like, client-wise and project-wise. Again, that kind of client fit, we'll do a project pretty much anywhere. We're starting to be open to the idea of working internationally.
No.
So that would be pretty cool. Right now, we're really focused on national growth, but I could see us expanding internationally in the future. So it's really that client alignment. If you think about your smaller apartment building, right? Let's say a design fee that's like $50,000 or $100,000. The premium you might pay to have us travel out there, if you're only doing one-off deals or working in one city, to pay us to come out there on a $50,000 job, the premium is probably not necessarily worth it. But if you're a national client that's doing 200,000 square foot to 500,000 square foot buildings across the country, it's better to have like consistency in your design team and then we all service the project nationally, right? Like that is reducing your risk rather than trying to find a new partner in every city you go to. So if you're working on a national scale or project's big enough, right? Like we're trying to create a brand, so we build relationships, and if we get enough momentum, we'll open offices in these cities. But if you're building a high rise, we've been collaborating. You see us through the podcast, through LinkedIn, through our website, and you really understand and want to partner with us. You're doing a high rise building, like it's really not a premium for us to get out there. We're coming, right?
Awesome. Any favorite cities so far or places to work?
Favorite cities, places to work. We just opened in Denver. I would say it's our reopening. We honestly didn't make we opened an office there in 2018, and we didn't have the right person to run the office. And then really our growth was focused here. So we didn't focus on trying to build a presence in Denver. We've always had people in and around the Denver market. So people in Colorado Springs, and most recently somebody on our team, Trevor Lombardi, moved from Boston to Denver to like reopen that office. And we're really excited about that city.
Just kind of expecting to hear more golf markets.
We do focus around golf. We should go south. I do. If I were to say about an area that I'm excited to see, and if I had to put my finger on a spot that will be next, would be Raleigh.
Yeah, there you go.
Interesting.
New tech hub, like housing. If you look at, like, we should talk about supply and demand up here. The demand is here, but the price point of rent might push the demand elsewhere. And if I'm thinking I'm a young professional, I'm not tied down to the city, I don't see an income to offset the cost of rent around here. Raleigh's growing like gangbusters. They have the tech, they have the job growth, they have great golf. Like, I might move there.
Hospitals, universities, they've got some. It's a good fundamental market for
There's
sure.
a good fundamental market, and we know some key clients that are looking down there, so it could make it even more enticing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think, not to sidetrack this into a Boston affordability sort of conversation, but, we're seeing that type of stuff happening. Hopefully we can solve that problem. And there's a lot of aspects of that, including adding density here. But frankly, again, the reason why we wanted to have you on the podcast is, like, everything matters. It's a team sport, like designing buildings well, doing good engineering so you're not having cost overruns. That all that stuff matters in terms of delivering product to the market at a cost that is not just continue to accelerate, and everyone can make reasonable returns, but also provide great places to live at a reasonable price level for this. And it's so important for the city here.
This is a new market, right? Like, over the past 5 years, it seems like you couldn't lose in real estate development, and it wasn't always. It's hindsight now. It wasn't always that predictable, but chances are, if you made a mistake in the last 5 years, it didn't really hurt you. You still won.
Right.
Going forward, it's not that's not the game we're playing anymore. Like, margins are tighter, returns are going to be tighter. Like, you want to have better predictability of your cash because you don't have the room for error.
Right. Yeah, that's well said.
Absolutely. What would you say if we were to say, hey, this is sort of the prevalent thinking in structural engineering? What's one thing you really strongly disagree with that most other people think is on the right track, but you disagree with at this point?
It's a great question. I would say over-designing is a bigger issue than people realize, largely because they don't understand the cost of what over-designing is, right? Like, we talked about, what's 5% on a building? Well, like 5% on your foundation, and then 5% on your steel, and your building's made of steel and concrete, and your building's large. Like, those numbers add up, right? So it feels, in some case, I feel like being a little conservative feels safer, right? And it kind of lets you sleep at night. But if you're designing appropriately, and you have the design systems and the quality assurance and the competency, and you've built the alignment, you understand why it's important to design to the building, not to some arbitrary added safety on the building. I think it's really important, especially in private development.
Yeah.
Like, that stuff really matters.
It's funny. It's always, just talking like that reminds me of my dad. Oh, everything used to be built better back in the day. And I'm like, well, even before science and before cool engineering firms like H&O. Like, what are you talking about here, right? So it's like,
yeah. I mean, you'll see that the house builders, right? They're like, oh yeah, 2x10 will go a mile. It's like, well, no, it didn't. Like, your floor sagged 1.5 feet, but like, yeah, it didn't cave in. Congrats.
Not yet, anyway.
Or I love the one where, like, like, I couldn't move that, or like, I jumped on the floor, it didn't move. It's like, the design load was a little bit more than you jumping on the floor. Like, we appreciate your perspective.
Classic. So what else is in the future of H&O here? I know obviously we've got big growth plans. Is there expanding markets? But what is the vision?
Well, for those that don't know us, like the big initiative right now is our new design development podcast, which we're really excited about, that comes out every week on Wednesday morning. So if you haven't heard it, tune in. It's your hub to learn direct from top performers in real estate development, design, and construction. We're super excited about that initiative. Like, we're helping showcase people like Mike DeMella, PT's a future guest, showcase what you guys do well, all the things in leadership, and provide value to the audience, right? Like, help them see a path, because like all of our stories are different, right? Like, success isn't like one straight line. So we want to share those stories. The vision for H&O is really more of that national growth, and something I haven't been too vocal about. So thank you for giving me the platform. We said we're going to grow nationally so we can service national clients from here. We're going to open up branch office in other areas. We're also going to start buying other firms. And I would say that part of our growth plan starts in about 2 years. And one of the things that we do differently than all of our competitors, and one of the things that was really compelling to us when we launched H&O, is we wanted to break there's kind of a career ceiling that you can see across the industry. And it's not just engineering, it's really every industry. There's clear career ceilings in a workforce. And the reason is, it's a few people at the top of the firm or the company hopefully they understand how the business works and how it makes money. Everybody else is just trained to do the things that make the business money without connecting the dots to what they do to how it produces the result. So people don't get exposed to the business. They don't see the full, it's really a wheel. It's a circle of things, of doing all of these things right. Like, how do you position yourself in the market? What's your value position? How do you communicate? Do you have a process? Marketing, sales, people? Do you have a strategic hiring plan that aligns? So what we're doing is we have H&O University Training and Development. It's not just engineering, it's everything in business. And then we have open book financial management. So we're opening up our company as the case study for everything that they're learning and we're talking about. What does that do? When we go into this next level of growth, we're going to start buying businesses, but it's not just me. It's not just Jeremiah and I that know how and why we're buying a business and how that works. We have an entire team that understands what we're doing. Our mission is a better experience. We're trying to have a better experience for our team and for our clients. For our team is career opportunity, learning opportunity, psychological safety in the workplace, right? Like, don't be afraid to make a mistake. Don't be afraid that you don't know how to do something. We're collectively trying to grow. When we go to buy another firm that probably doesn't have training, doesn't have good systems, right? Doesn't have financial transparency, we're going to open their books to them. We're going to show them our books. We're going to show their lack of systems and process. We're going to show ours. And then we're going to show, hey, you have a company-wide bonus plan tied to your company performance. And here's our history of our performance. Do you want to operate how you've always operated, or are you in on the H&O way? We think it's a pretty good strategy to create. It's hard to buy a business, to acquire a business. We think our team and our strategy is putting us in a really good position to do so successfully and get buy-in from the people that we're in. With this newfound brand awareness and growth, like, we're hoping to attract people to H&O. Like, if you're a business owner out there and you've been running a firm and you found that like running a firm's really stressful and hard and like these things, and you don't have, but you love the business, you love engineering, like, we'd love to collaborate and partner with you. Like, that is a really good partnership because you have the capacity to do it. We have the systems and the entire business built out behind it to put everybody in a position to succeed.
Yeah, and I think that's smart. I mean, look, you've said it many times, but when you can have that holistic alignment, not just between firm and client, but within the team as well, and have the incentives aligned, the process aligned, the mission, values, purpose, all that stuff aligned appropriately, it makes for a powerful value proposition to clients, to employees, to partners or acquisition opportunities. I mean, so I think you're right on track, and it's a pretty smart strategy and plan for sure.
Yeah, thank you. We now that we've done it, we would not consider business any other way, to be honest. Like, it just gives team the complete context, and there's all these reasons for why you might not, right? Like, people will see how much money we make. People will see that we don't make money, and they're going to run scared, right? Like, my books are a mess. Like, I don't even know how to control, and if they know that, then they're going to run. Like, there's a million reasons why. The pros to why are like so far above and beyond the risks. Like, they understand value. How is value created? And if you can teach people how value is created, they're going to start to see ways to add value to the business, right? And it increases their they're empowered to do more. Their earning potential goes up. The company makes more money. Like everybody wins when you create an environment where people get it.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think so. With sort of the acquisition strategy you have in mind, are most engineering firms, structural engineering firms specifically, are they sort of small medium business, or is there sort of a wide range of different opportunity or different types of firms and size firms?
Great question. So I don't have like industry-wide data, but if I were to talk about when I stepped into, or when we went to launch H&O, the thing that we were talking about was the market opportunity. So we had visibility from the steel company. We're getting design drawings from everybody in the market because we're bidding all of the jobs to do the steel work. So we see from every single firm, and we both worked in the market for our careers and lived around here, so we were familiar with the players. There was a few firms that served high-rise, institutional, hospitals. There's those few firms. They're saturated just doing that work. Then there's a few firms that compete in the mid-market. Let's talk your Podium, your garden style apartments, your 95 belt, like office building, that type of stuff. And then there's a bunch of firms that are, I call them kind of garage engineers. Like there's the 1Z, 2Z, 3Z firms, like the people that are kind of doing their small local work that have it's a lifestyle business. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a lifestyle business. They have only so much capacity that they can grow, and they're not trying to grow. So what we saw the bull market, the demand, everything that was here, and that largely underserved. Yep. Like, so we saw that opportunity. And when I think my intuition is if we looked nationally, is we're going to see more of the same, right? I don't think that's going to really change nationally. I got to get better data, and something I'm actually working on right now is getting better data on if I do go niche, or if I do go to Raleigh or Denver, or if I pick another market like Miami. I want to actually have better data, because your total addressable market and like what you go after, like what game you play, has so much to do with how much success and opportunity you have. Like if I want to do multifamily and I see one city that has $2 billion a year in multifamily development and another city has $6 billion, and I can look at the number of suppliers that are actually working in those market, I can gauge how well it's served relative to the scale of the market. And now I understand, if I go in, let's say 15% of that market is actually my total addressable market. Like I don't want every client. I only want my clients. You assume that it's 15. I can gauge like, okay, that's a $10 million opportunity. This is a $20 million opportunity. And if I'm going to put eggs and invest somewhere, I'm going to go for the $20 million opportunity, right? So I'm trying to get better data.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, I think with most things as we're working on here in real estate is it's especially a data-driven business, and whether you're making investment decisions to buy businesses or invest in real estate, it's always useful to have good data, unless you're PT and just rely on intuition all the time.
It's got a great gut.
Pretty good guy. You're getting bigger by the day.
So, but maybe just to kind of close it down and wrap it up a little bit here, we can dive into some of the things you like to do. PT mentioned golf, but what else do you do for your downtime?
For my downtime, I golf. Family, I got 2 young kids. My son's 5, Rens 5. I'm Rens 4. It's legacy. My daughter Maisie, she is 3, and my wife Allie. So I spend as much time as I can with them. Otherwise, like, I'm a student. This is the game I enjoy playing, the game of business and real estate development, engineering, and golf.
Fantastic. What is it? Handicap? No, golf. Handicap? Is that the right question?
Not as low as Jerry's.
Yeah. So Jeremiah, I always like to say I compete with Jeremiah at everything that he's the best at. So he's the best engineer I know. He's one of the best golfers I know. So like I was like, pick any other sport, Jerry. Let's play something different. No. He's like, I only play games that I'm going to win. Why would I do anything different?
Smart. Right there, you know? Cool. What's the best book you read in the past year, call it?
I'll share 2 books, and I like this question. $100 Million Offers by Alex Hermosi. This guy is essentially executed like my vision of a bigger holding company and acquisition, like better, faster, like just completely. The guy is incredible. His book, the premise of that book is make an offer so good that people feel stupid saying no. I might have already said that either before or during this episode, but the way he sizes up an opportunity in a market, and he quickly identifies the opportunity and how to best address the market, and then create an offer that's so good that people feel stupid saying no. Like just the mindset of trying to craft that, like just trying to solve that problem is such a good way to get there. Like I couldn't recommend that. I probably read that. I think I read it for the entire month of January straight. I might have read it 6 to 8 times. I pick it up periodically. The second book that I would recommend is The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. And I honestly like associate him to like the Darwin of our day today. Like this guy is so well read. He is such a deep thinker. He's so articulate. And I'll share 2 things that were like a big takeaway for me, because I thought it was, the words are perfect to describe it, is judgment and leverage. And the message is, in an age of leverage, judgment is far more valuable than time. And I'm always an advocate. I've always said like time does not equal value. If you say like, I'm $10 an hour to cover my bills and it's 4 hours, so that service is $40. Yeah, but what if that 4 hours of work just made somebody 50 grand? Was that worth $40? No. Like it created far more value than the time. The time and the value doesn't matter. So judgment is far more value. So to drive home the message of judgment, if somebody is responsible for $1 billion worth of investment, and one potential leader's probability of being right is 70%, and the other person's probability is 80%, that's worth $100 million. 10% judgment. Both are great, but the gap between those 2 people is $100 million, and that has nothing to do with time. And then the 4 types of leverage that he talks about. One is people. So you manage a team, you have leverage to get more done. You have a company, you have more leverage to get things done, people. Second one is financial. So equity and debt. Real estate's a perfect example. You get to raise equity, you get to leverage debt, you can get more. You can get compounding returns because you have access to equity and debt. It's financial. Third one's technology. Software. I know Mike goes against the venture-backed. We talk venture-backed companies, but the reason they're venture-backed and people go for this all or nothing play is because the inputs required to generate potential exponential returns are significant. So like input to output, that's the gap in leverage. And the fourth one is content. It's what we're doing out here today, right? Like we spend time right now talking, getting to know each other, sharing our stories. Now this audio gets cut up, videos get cut up, it gets posted on all major platforms, social media, YouTube, wherever it goes. That content is just going to work in perpetuity. So we spent an hour, 2 hours together today. You create content now that gets to work for you forever. And we do this over a year, 2 years, 5 years. People find out about us in 2, 3 years. They might come back and listen to this, right? That's significant leverage on content and creating brand awareness. It's not like putting an ad in a magazine that people threw out, right? Like content's super powerful. So the 4 areas of leverage, judgment, such a great book, would recommend it.
Very cool. I actually haven't read that yet. It's been recommended to me a few times, but I will have to definitely add that to the top of my list here. So good rec.
Sorry for the long response.
I was going to say I may not even need to read the book now. Apparently, you just talked to Rens.
Yeah. There's more to it than that.
Rens Cliff Notes.
Perfect for you.
There's more to it, but those are so impactful. Like I love how he framed that. It drives that message home.
Fantastic. What else do we need to know that we haven't asked you?
What else do we need to know? PT what was your prep question? What's something crazy but true?
That's a good one.
Do we roll with that?
Let's roll with it.
Let's hear it.
The crazy but true, we launched H&O in 2016. I think it was June in 2016. I didn't work full-time at our own company until 2019.
That's very cool, actually. And, because it usually goes the other way, right? Usually you start the business, you absolutely pull your hair out, grind. And then maybe someday it's successful and you can kind of back off. But you actually went opposite, which is pretty wild.
That doesn't mean I wasn't like doing work for the company. And like I was really relationship sales driven. Jeremiah and I worked together at the steel company while we built this process. And we got more work, but we decided for Jeremiah to go full time to work on executing. He's a far better engineer than I am. So him working in operations and getting projects done was a way better leverage of his skill set than mine. And we started hiring people instead of having me go. Instead of him and I just start doing projects, he started doing projects and we started hiring people. So I think we had 3 employees before I started working there full time. So we just kept hiring people to get the work done. And I was working on the sales and the relationships and business process and strategy alongside Jeremiah during that time.
Really cool.
I think that's unique.
That is a very unique and what was the question? Fun but true fact or
Crazy but
crazy
true.
but true?
Crazy
Yeah.
but true.
That's what happens when you make up the questions for the show.
Yeah.
I liked it.
But Rens, it was fantastic having you, man. I always learn a lot talking to you, and
Yeah.
hopefully this is the start of many, many more conversations, and hopefully working together on some cool projects.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Rens. Yeah, really, really informative. Awesome. Really appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. Love what you're doing here at Charles Gate.
Awesome, good stuff. And hopefully we see everyone next time on another episode of Empowered Returns. And in the show notes and everything, we'll have all the links on how to contact Rens and find Rens. And if anyone wants to reach out for structural engineering work or business advice or a book report, feel free. See you, everybody.
I love that.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Empowered Returns. If you're a forward-thinking real estate investor or developer looking for actionable advice that will help you generate market-beating returns, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast fix. I'm Mike DeMello with Charles Gate, and I'd love to connect on LinkedIn and further the conversation for any specific questions you may have. Thank you for listening.